Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to ask and maybe answer, sort of, a musical question. Is the classical repertoire on disc shrinking? I mean, I'm not talking about the fact that things go in and out of print and whatnot. That is, one of those. I mean, we sort of are used to that, or it's available on streaming. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what's getting recorded these days, because in the past couple of years, I find myself, and I'm just talking about what comes across my desk, reviewing there's a smattering of, individual releases of interest and interesting composers and whatnot. There always is. But it seems like a lot of it is nothing but Rachmaninoff and Bruckner. So what is the deal? I mean, what is the deal with those composers? Well, the Bruckner year, this is the Bruckner year. But traditionally, nobody really cared about Bruckner. Of course, there was a time when nobody really cared about Mahler either. So you could argue that Bruckner is finally breaking into the mainstream, breaking out of the little sort of German Bruckner ghetto in which he's lived for so many years with his passionate admirers and passionate interpreters. But I don't see that really, because the volume of what is released and who it gets released to, let's put it this way. I mean, who makes the decisions about what gets recorded and what people listen to? There used to be some loose association between the record labels that made the product and the audience that listened to the product. But now I don't think that exists at all. I think that recordings are released totally in a vacuum. Everything is done on spec, as we used to say in the real estate business. In other words, you have no idea whether there's a market for it or there's a demand for it. There's no demand for Bruckner. I guarantee you. There isn't. And everyone's doing it anyway. And they're doing it because A, they need something to do, and B, someone's willing to pay for them to do it. Not that they're hoping to make money selling it once they've done it. They're just getting paid for the activity of doing it. And so we're going to get inundated with Bruckner this year. We've already seen 3 or 4 Bruckner symphony cycles popping up all at once, and I expect that trend will continue. And then Rachmaninoff. Now, I love Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff's always been popular, of course, but does every pianist in the world have to do a Rachmaninoff cycle? Evidently. I mean, they're just churning them out. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And there are reissues too. Let's not forget, Naxos and Vox are doing reissuing all of the Slatkin Rachmaninoff stuff. I mean, it's wonderful stuff. I'm not talking about quality. We're just talking about quantity, the sheer weight. But the idea fascinates me that Rachmaninoff is that popular. And he is in terms of 2 piano concertos, numbers 2 and 3, and the Paganini Rhapsody. That's Rachmaninoff. Even the symphonies don't have that kind of cachet because, of course, the piano concerti have virtuoso, big-name pianists who are willing to play them. But there's so much more to play. Even like the Tchaikovsky First Piano Concerto, the Grieg Piano Concerto, all these popular romantic piano concertos, the Schumann Concerto, no one's paying any attention to them, it seems. They're just doing Rachmaninoff over and over and over and over. I mean, the Russian pianists, of course, they all have to because they're Russian. I get that. But so, but everybody else, it fascinates me. It really does. So let's just say, if you talk about Bruckner and Rachmaninoff, and then there's the usual, there's like Beethoven, right? So Beethoven, and maybe Brahms and some Mahler, 5 names. You basically have a substantial majority of the recordings that people are making. I mean, maybe so you could throw in Sibelius now and then and a couple other people, Shostakovich. But wow, what a tiny number of things we see popping up over and over and over and over. And it's really kind of incredible. And I really, I ask myself, is it record labels who think that nobody cares about anything else? Record labels who don't know how to sell anything else or make anything else because they're not selling it? Is it artists who have no other interests? I mean, nothing? Artists and conductors? Is it the way that the concert world is set up now, and that you only have major names doing the same 3 or 4 pieces of music over and over again? It just seems to me, in my subjective perception, that the whole thing is shrinking. One of the things that's making it shrink also has been the period instrument movement, because although the repertoire hasn't necessarily shrunk, it has fragmented. Because the period instrument people now are claiming everything from the Baroque period through Beethoven, basically, as specialty repertoire. So while at normal symphony concerts, of course, you'll see the Beethoven symphonies and occasionally a Mozart and occasionally a Haydn, you don't see that healthy mix of repertoire you used to see, where everybody could basically play everything. And if some of it was less than stylish, I mean, obviously the period instrument groups can't play the later stuff. They try, but they can't. I mean, practically speaking, we're talking about what your major orchestra in your town would likely do. But now there's a certain amount of trepidation in taking on the classical repertoire, which is a terrible, terrible shame, because it seems like the roots, the foundation of everything that came later, the great tree that grew, they've been cut off. And so programs no longer have that sort of continuity that they used to have. There wasn't the chance of encountering, something that, a Bach Brandenburg concerto. I mean, I used to go to concerts and see these things, Baroque music done fairly routinely. I mean, were they great performances? Well, not always, but I mean, they played this stuff at least. And now for recordings, you would be very, very hard-pressed to find Mozart or Beethoven symphonies performed by major orchestras and recorded regularly by major orchestras. When you think about it, think about Karl Böhm was a Mozart specialist. I mean, he really was. And Leonard Bernstein's Haydn, and these people played all of that music in concert. I saw Bernstein, do Haydn symphonies routinely. One of the best concerts I ever saw in my life had Bernstein and the New York Phil. It was Haydn's London Symphony and Jacob Druckmann's Oriole and Mahler's First, I think, and stuff like that. It was wonderful. Just a tremendous mix of things. Now, this is, of course, different from what we see on recordings. But on recordings nowadays, you don't see major orchestras doing the classical symphonies anymore. You won't find a Karl Böhm Mozart cycle type thing happening with any major orchestra today. I mean, they just wouldn't dare. That's now the province of the specialty folks. And even, when Harnoncourt did some Mozart symphonies with the Concertgebouw and recorded those, it was because he could make them play in a period instrument-y sort of way. It was a specialty thing. It wasn't Bernard Haitink doing Mozart. Of course, thank God he didn't. But, my point is simply that between the fragmentation of the repertoire and the focus on just a tiny handful of late Romantic, early 20th century people, it seems like the lion's share of classical recordings are really getting to be boring. Just the same old stuff coming out time and time again. And I don't mind listening to it and covering it. Some of it's going to be splendid, of course. It's not all bad. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just weighing it. We're just talking about sheer quantity. This is just my perspective, and I wanted to share it with you. I wonder what yours is. Maybe you see things a little differently from I do, than the way I do. But I'm kind of amazed, and a little bit sort of surprised, because there's so much repertoire out there, so many things people could be doing and should be doing, of course. And I try to emphasize the unique and unusual and the interesting, because that's what I like, and that's what I think collectors who already have 400 recordings of everything like as well. But I just don't see a lot of variety on the horizon from the big names, the big labels, the big artists. Of course, they matter less than they used to as well, but still. That's my perspective. And I wanted to share it with you and see what yours is, because I am just curious. We're talking about recordings. Not what happens in concert, but on recordings. Just keep that in mind, please. And thank you very much. Keep on listening, hopefully to not the same old stuff, but to other things as well. Take care.